Today we're going to delve into one of the most desperate and frightening scenarios any driver can face. 7 horror stories involving cars that broke down in the wrong place. Get ready to hear chilling accounts of people who found themselves completely vulnerable when their vehicles stopped working in isolated, dangerous locations where help seemed impossible to reach. We'll explore real, suspenseful stories, showing how a simple mechanical failure can turn into a nightmare when it happens at the most inopportune time and place. So, sit back, check that your car is working properly, and let's begin this hair-raising journey. Oh, and before anything goes wrong, take the opportunity to subscribe to the channel, activate the bell, and like it. This helps the channel a lot and ensures you don't miss any scary content like this. Shall we? 1. The abandoned midnight post. The disappearance of Sarah and Michael Collins, which occurred in November 2022 on Route 50 in Nevada, United States, remains one of the most disturbing cases in the state police's files. The couple, traveling from Las Vegas to Denver in the early hours of the morning, became the protagonists of a nightmare that shocked investigators and family members. The following account was reconstructed from security camera footage, phone records, and evidence found at the scene. Sarah and Michael, married for 3 years, decided to make the overnight trip to avoid the heavy traffic and desert heat. Route 50, known as the loneliest road in America, traverses vast expanses of desert with few signs of civilization. The couple was in high spirits, listening to music and talking about future plans, when their car's engine began to sputter around 2:30 a.m. The vehicle came to a complete stop near an old gas station that looked abandoned for decades. The weathered concrete structure, with rusted pumps and broken windows, stood out eerily against the starry desert sky. There were no other cars or signs of life for miles. The silence was absolute, broken only by the wind whistling between the dilapidated structures. Michael tried restarting the engine several times, but the car wouldn't respond. Sarah's cell phone displayed no service, and the feeling of isolation was overwhelming. They decided to explore the gas station in search of a phone or any means of communication. The front door was ajar, creaking in the night wind. Upon entering, they were greeted by a strong smell of mildew and stale gasoline. The interior of the gas station was a maze of empty shelves, rusted cans, and accumulated dust. But they soon realized the place wasn't completely abandoned. There were recent signs of occupancy: a chair with a clean cushion, fresh food scraps, and, most disturbing of all, a carefully organized collection of personal items scattered across the shelves. Sarah found wallets, car keys, jewelry, and photographs of strangers, all arranged like trophies in a macabre display case. Michael discovered a notebook with detailed notes on various travelers, physical descriptions, license plates, arrival, and departure times. The last entry, still in fresh ink, described a young couple in a blue sedan, exactly like them. Fear gripped them as they heard heavy footsteps coming from the back of the station. A hoarse voice called, "Can I help you?" An elderly man wearing dirty overalls and carrying a flashlight emerged from the shadows. His eyes shone with a disturbing intensity, and a forced smile revealed yellow teeth. He introduced himself as Earl, the station's caretaker. Earl offered to help with the car, but his presence was unsettling. He knew details about them they hadn't mentioned, like their names and destination. When Sarah asked about their personal belongings, Earl explained that travelers sometimes forget things and that he likes to keep souvenirs. The couple tried to remain calm, but the sense of danger was palpable. Michael suggested they get back in the car, but Earl insisted they stay. "It's dangerous at night in the desert," he said, discreetly blocking the exit. "A lot of accidents happen around here." His words sounded more like a threat than concern. Sarah noticed that Earl carried a knife at his waist, and that his hands were stained with something dark. During their forced conversation, the couple noticed more chilling details. Polaroid photographs were pinned to the wall, showing different people in moments of terror. One showed a tied-up woman, another an injured man. Earl noticed Sarah's gaze and casually commented, "I like to capture special moments." Tensions rose as Earl began asking invasive personal questions about their lives, families, and routines. He seemed to be sizing them up, like a predator studying its prey. Michael tried to distract him while Sarah discreetly searched for an alternative exit. She found a back door, but it was locked from the outside. Earl then revealed his true nature. "You're not the first to stop here," he said, pointing to the collection of objects. "And you won't be the last." He explained that he sabotaged cars passing by on the road, forcing travelers to seek help at a station. "It's a lucrative business," he laughed, showing a box full of credit cards and cash. The couple tried to escape, but Earl was prepared. He knew every corner of the outpost, and had set traps and locks at every exit. "There's no point in running," he said calmly. "The desert is vast, and I know every rock." He revealed that there were other guests in a hidden basement, people who had tried and failed to escape. During a desperate struggle, Michael managed to temporarily disarm Earl and break a window. Sarah escaped first, running toward the road, while Michael fought with the attacker. She managed to stop a passing truck driver and alert the authorities. When police arrived, they found Earl unconscious and Michael seriously injured, but alive. The investigation revealed that Earl had been operating his scheme for over a decade. The remains of at least 8 different people were found in the basement of the gas station. He confessed to luring lone travelers, stealing their belongings, and eliminating witnesses. The gas station was his hunting ground, strategically located on one of the most isolated roads in the country. Earl was sentenced to life in prison, but he never revealed the location of all his victims. The gas station was demolished, but the area remains avoided by local drivers. Sarah and Michael survived, but never fully recovered from the trauma. The case became a warning about the dangers of traveling alone on deserted roads and the importance of maintaining regular contact with family. This story, based on documented true events, serves as a grim reminder that danger can lurk in the most unexpected places, where loneliness and isolation create opportunities for human predators who prey on travelers' vulnerability. 2. The Disappearance Workshop. The disappearance of the Mendoza family, which occurred in April 2023 on Provincial Route 40 in the province of Mendoza, Argentina, remains one of the most disturbing cases in the Argentine Federal Police archives. The family, consisting of Carlos, Elena, and their 2 teenage children, Sofia and Diego, were traveling from Buenos Aires to Bariloche when they became the protagonists of a nightmare that shocked the entire region. The story was reconstructed from security camera footage, witness statements, and evidence found at the scene. The trip began as a typical family adventure. Carlos had planned to show his children the stunning landscapes of Argentine Patagonia while taking advantage of the school holidays. The family was excited, stopping in small towns to take photos and experience the local culture. Around 3 p.m., as they were crossing an isolated rural area between Malargüe and San Rafael, the car's engine began making strange noises and gradually lost power. The vehicle came to a complete stop near a small mechanic shop that appeared to be the only inhabited building for miles. The weathered sign read, "Taller Mecanico, Raul Herrera," and the shop looked as if it had been in operation for decades. A middle-aged man in greasy overalls came out to greet them. He introduced himself as Raul, the owner, and offered assistance with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Raul examined the engine and diagnosed a complex problem that would require special parts. "It'll take a few days to get the parts," he explained, suggesting the family wait at his property. "I have rooms in the back. It's safer than a hotel in the city." Elena hesitated, but Carlos agreed, concerned about the cost of lodging and the family's safety in an unfamiliar area. Raul's property was larger than it appeared. Besides the workshop, there was a modest house, a few sheds, and a courtyard surrounded by a high fence. During dinner, Raul was hospitable, telling stories of the region and asking questions about the family's life in Buenos Aires. However, Elena noticed disturbing details. Photographs of different families on the walls, all in poses similar to those they had taken during the day. The first night, Sofia woke to strange noises coming from the garage. She looked out the window and saw Raul working on several different cars, all with license plates from different provinces. In the morning, when she mentioned the incident, Raul explained that he was accumulating work and that many travelers needed repairs. His explanation sounded forced, and Carlos began to sense something was wrong. On the second day, while Raul was supposedly working on the car, Diego explored the property and found a locked shed. Through a crack, he saw dozens of personal items organized on shelves: suitcases, toys, documents, and photographs. When he told his parents, Carlos confronted Raul, who explained that people sometimes forget things and that he kept them to return when they came back. Tensions escalated when Elena found a cell phone hidden among her clothes, recording their conversations. Raul had installed surveillance devices in the rooms. When confronted, he admitted that he liked to get to know his guests better, and that security was important. His demeanor changed, becoming more controlling and threatening. On the third night, Carlos tried to secretly start the car, but discovered that Raul had removed essential parts, trapping them. When they tried to leave on foot, they encountered an electrified fence and loose dogs on the perimeter. Raul appeared, armed, and calmly explained that they couldn't leave yet because they knew too much about their business. Raul then revealed his true operation. For years, he had been luring traveling families, sabotaging their cars, and holding them prisoner. He sold the vehicles on the black market, used their documents for fraud, and eliminated witnesses. "You're not the first," he said, showing a macabre collection of identity cards. "And you won't be the last." The family was held captive for days while Raul prepared their processing. Elena managed to send a distress message using a hidden cell phone before Raul discovered it. The message reached a cousin in Buenos Aires, who alerted the authorities. During an escape attempt, Carlos fought with Raul, allowing Elena and the children to escape. The police arrived in time to save Carlos, who was seriously injured, and arrest Raul. The investigation revealed that he had been operating for over a decade, responsible for the disappearance of at least 15 families. The belongings of dozens of victims and evidence of a complex vehicle and document trafficking scheme were found in the warehouse. Raul was sentenced to life in prison, but he never revealed the location of all the bodies. The workshop was demolished, but the area remains avoided by local travelers. The Mendoza family survived, but never fully recovered from the trauma. The case became a warning about the dangers of trusting strangers in isolated areas. This story, based on documented true events, serves as a grim reminder that human predators can hide behind facades of hospitality, exploiting the vulnerability of travelers in remote regions where help may be far away and danger very close. 3. Distress signal. The disappearance of 3 friends in a remote region of northern Ontario, Canada, during a blizzard in January 2023 has become one of the most disturbing and enigmatic cases in local history. The following account is reconstructed from the sole survivor's testimony, intercepted radio recordings, and evidence found by the rescue team. Lucas, Ethan, and Sarah, longtime friends, decided to embark on a winter expedition to explore off-the-beaten-path trails in the Canadian boreal forest. Equipped with a 4x4 vehicle, 2-way radios, several days' worth of supplies, and clothing suited to extreme cold, they set off confidently, despite forecasts of an approaching snowstorm. The first day was uneventful. The white, silent landscape enchanted the group, who recorded every moment with cameras and radios. The snow fell gently, covering the trees and ground, creating a scene of almost surreal beauty. However, late in the afternoon, the storm began to intensify, drastically reducing visibility and making the roads dangerous. During the night, the vehicle ran out of fuel on a dirt road covered in deep snow. The engine failed, and despite attempts to restart it, the car didn't respond. With no cell phone signal and radio interference, the friends decided to set up a makeshift shelter inside the vehicle, waiting for the storm to pass. The cold was biting, and the silence of the forest seemed to amplify every sound. The wind howling through the trees, the creaking of the car's body under the weight of the snow, and the nervous pounding of their hearts. They took turns keeping the fire going in a small portable stove, trying to stave off their growing fear. The feeling of isolation was overwhelming, and with each passing hour, the hope of rescue diminished. However, when they tried to use the radio to call for help, they found their messages being intercepted and answered by an unfamiliar voice that seemed to know their every move. The voice, calm and menacing, instructed them to follow a specific route through the forest, promising rescue, but the feeling that they were being led into a death trap grew with each passing minute. The voice on the radio knew impossible details. Their names, the make and model of their car, even conversations they'd had throughout the day. "Lucas, you're scared," the voice said. "Sarah, stop shaking. Ethan, you should have brought more fuel." The psychological terror grew, and the group began to wonder if they'd been watched for longer than they'd realized. Suspicious, but with no other option, they decided to follow the voice's instructions. The blizzard made it difficult to find their way, and the trail seemed to turn into silent, white mazes. With every step, they felt someone watching them, hidden among the snow-covered trees. The wind carried whispers that seemed to form words, and shadows moved among the frozen trunks. During the hike, they encountered disturbing signs, footprints that didn't belong to either of them, the remains of abandoned campsites, and scattered personal items, such as torn backpacks and dirty clothes. Fear grew, and tension grew between the friends. Arguments began to break out, with Ethan questioning the decision to follow the voice, while Lucas tried to remain calm, and Sarah fought against her growing panic. At one point, they found an area where the snow had been deliberately removed, revealing symbols scratched into the frozen ground. The voice on the radio laughed when Lucas mentioned the discovery. "You're on the right track," he said. "Keep following the markings." The feeling of being led into a trap became undeniable. On the second night, Sarah mysteriously disappeared. The group woke up and couldn't find her. They searched frantically, shouting her name, but heard only the echo of their own voices in the freezing forest. Sarah's footprints led deeper into the woods, but then abruptly disappeared, as if she'd been taken by someone unseen. The voice on the radio remained silent throughout the search, increasing their desperation. Lucas and Ethan, now alone, tried to remain calm and continue their search, but the feeling of being hunted intensified. The voice on the radio continued to guide them, alternating between promises of help and veiled threats. At one point, the voice revealed personal details about their families, addresses, and routines, heightening the psychological terror. "You should never have come here," it whispered. On the third day, Ethan also disappeared. Lucas woke alone, with only the silence of the forest and the hiss of the radio for company. Exhausted and desperate, he decided to go on alone, trying to find a way out of the forest. The voice now spoke directly to him, using an almost paternal tone. "Lucas, you're alone now. But don't worry, I'll take care of you." He found an abandoned cabin, where there were signs of recent presence, an unlit campfire, empty food cans, and an old radio that picked up only static and distorted voices. Inside the cabin, Lucas found notes and maps indicating false routes and traps scattered throughout the forest. The pages were stained and torn, but they clearly indicated someone was using the land to prey on unsuspecting travelers. Among the papers, he found photographs of other groups who had disappeared in the region, including a photo of Sarah and Ethan, taken without their knowledge. The realization that they had been observed since the beginning of the trip was devastating. A diary detailed methods of intercepting radio signals and techniques of psychological manipulation. During the night, Lucas heard footsteps around the cabin and whispers that seemed to come from every direction. He tried to hide, but the feeling of being surrounded was overwhelming. The intense cold and physical exhaustion made the situation even more desperate. The voice on the radio continued speaking, now closer, as if the pursuer were outside the cabin. At dawn, Lucas was found by a rescue team, in shock and almost exhausted. He reported everything that had happened, but the search for Ethan and Sarah was fruitless. No trace of the missing was found, only the disturbing signs left in the snow and personal belongings scattered throughout the forest. The investigation revealed that the region had been the scene of other similar disappearances in recent years. Radio interception equipment was found hidden in trees, and the cabin contained evidence of an elaborate scheme to lure and capture lone travelers. The case was filed as a disappearance under suspicious circumstances, but local residents and guides avoid the area, fearing that the voice intercepting radio signals is still active, guiding and hunting lone travelers. Hey guys, the stories of cars that broke down in the wrong place are hair-raising, aren't they? If you're enjoying these suspenseful and tense stories, take a quick break, subscribe to the channel, and leave a like. This really helps the channel grow and motivates me to keep bringing you more hair-raising content. Now, let's get back to the next stories. There's still a lot of scary stuff ahead. 4. The False Samaritan. The disappearance of Jessica Thompson, which occurred in March 2023 on the Stewart Highway in Australia's Northern Territory, remains one of the most disturbing cases in the Australian Federal Police's files. The 26-year-old nurse, traveling from Darwin to Alice Springs, became the protagonist of a nightmare that shocked the entire region. The story was reconstructed from security camera footage, GPS records, and the victim's own testimony. Jessica had planned the trip as a much-needed break after months of intense hospital work. The Stewart Highway, known for cutting through Australia's arid heartland, offered stunning scenery but also represented one of the most isolated and dangerous stretches of road in the country. Around 2 p.m., approximately 200 kilometers from Alice Springs, the car began experiencing engine trouble. The vehicle came to a complete stop in a deserted area, surrounded by red earth and sparse vegetation typical of the Australian outback. The heat was intense, reaching 42 degrees Celsius, 104 degrees Fahrenheit, and there was no cell phone signal. Jessica tried to restart the engine several times, but the car wouldn't respond. The feeling of vulnerability was overwhelming, amplified by the absolute silence and the vastness of the desert stretching to the horizon. After about an hour of waiting under the scorching sun, Jessica spotted a vehicle approaching. An ordinary-looking man wearing work clothes and a hat stopped to offer assistance. He introduced himself as Dave, a local mechanic who knew the area well. His demeanor was helpful and reassuring, exactly what Jessica needed in that moment of despair. Dave examined the engine and diagnosed a problem with the fuel pump. "It happens a lot around here," he explained, suggesting that Jessica accompany him to his nearby property, where he would have the necessary parts for the repair. "It's safer than being out here in the heat," he insisted, pointing to the relentless sun. Jessica hesitated, but the alternative of remaining alone in the desert seemed worse. Dave's property was about 15 kilometers off the main road, accessible only by a dirt trail. The location was isolated, surrounded by rocky hills and dense vegetation. There was a modest house, a few sheds, and a yard enclosed by a high fence. Dave explained that he had lived alone since his wife's death and that he occasionally helped travelers in need. Along the way, Jessica noticed details that made her uncomfortable. Dave asked personal questions about her life, work, and family, demonstrating excessive interest. He also knew details about the area that seemed inconsistent with his claim of being just a local mechanic. When they arrived at the property, Jessica felt a chill at the sight of the high fence and locked gates. Dave offered her water and food, insisting that Jessica rest while he worked on the car. However, she realized he wasn't actually repairing the vehicle, just pretending to work on the engine. When asked about his progress, Dave always had an excuse. "I need a special part. It's going to take longer than I thought. It's better to wait until tomorrow." Overnight, Jessica was housed in a room at the back of the house. The room was clean, but there were disturbing details: barred windows, a lock on the outside, and women's personal belongings scattered about, as if other women had stayed there before. When asked about the objects, Dave vaguely explained that he sometimes hosted travelers. The next morning, Jessica decided to explore the property while Dave was supposedly working. She found a partially hidden shed behind the house, where she discovered something terrifying: several abandoned cars, all with license plates from different Australian states. The vehicles were in varying stages of dismantling, and some bore clear signs of accidents or sabotage. Among the cars, Jessica recognized a sedan she had seen on the news about a missing woman months earlier. The realization that Dave was not a Samaritan, but a predator sabotaging cars to lure victims, was devastating. She realized her own car had likely been sabotaged when Dave passed her on the road, before casually returning to offer help. Jessica tried to remain calm and plan an escape. During lunch, she pretended to be satisfied with Dave's care, but secretly looked for an opportunity to escape. She noticed that Dave carried keys in a large ring and that there were security cameras scattered around the property, indicating he was monitoring every move. That afternoon, Dave revealed his true colors. "You're not leaving anytime soon," he said calmly, locking the door to Jessica's room. "I have plans for you." He explained that he had taken care of other women before and that Jessica would be just another addition to his collection. The mask of kindness slipped completely, revealing a cold and calculating man. Jessica spent the night planning a desperate escape. She managed to force open the bedroom window and escape during the early hours of the morning, while Dave was asleep. She ran through the property, avoiding the cameras, and managed to reach one of the abandoned cars that still had fuel. The engine revved, and she drove desperately down the dirt track, trying to reach the main road. Dave woke to the sound of the engine and chased her in his own vehicle. The chase lasted for miles along the deserted highway, with Jessica speeding while Dave tried to force her to stop. She managed to spot a truck and desperately signaled for help. The trucker, realizing the situation, blocked the road, allowing Jessica to escape. The police were called and arrested Dave at his property. The investigation revealed that he had been operating for over 5 years, sabotaging the cars of women traveling alone and holding them captive. The belongings of at least 12 different victims, including documents, jewelry, and photographs, were found in the warehouse. Some of the women were never found. Dave confessed to developing an elaborate method. He patrolled Stewart Highway, identified women traveling alone, discreetly sabotaged their cars during stops at gas stations or rest areas, and then returned to offer assistance when their vehicles broke down. His secluded property was the perfect place to keep his victims hidden. Dave was sentenced to life in prison, but the fate of all his victims was never revealed. Jessica survived, but never fully recovered from the trauma. The case became a warning about the dangers of accepting help from strangers in isolated areas, especially for women traveling alone. 5. The Road of No Return. The disappearance of Tomasz Kowalski, which occurred in September 2023 in the industrial region of Katowice, Poland, remains one of the most disturbing cases in the Polish National Police Archives. The 34-year-old ride-hailing driver became the protagonist of a nightmare that revealed an organized criminal network that preyed on lone drivers. The story was reconstructed from GPS records, audio recordings from the app, and statements from investigators. Tomasz had been working as a ride-hailing driver for 3 years, always preferring night shifts when demand was higher and the rides were more lucrative. That September night, around 11 p.m., he received a request to pick up a passenger at a residential address in downtown Katowice and take them to an industrial area on the outskirts of the city. The fare was attractive, and the passenger had an impeccable rating on the app. Upon arriving at the pickup point, Tomasz encountered an unremarkable-looking man wearing dark clothes and carrying a backpack. The passenger, who identified himself as Marek, silently entered the car and confirmed the destination, a logistics company in the industrial zone. During the journey, Marek remained silent, responding only with monosyllables to Tomasz's attempts at conversation. As they moved away from the city center, the streets became more deserted and poorly lit. The industrial area was known for housing businesses that operated only during the day, leaving the area completely empty at night. Tomasz began to feel increasingly uncomfortable with the silence of the passengers and the isolated nature of the destination. When they reached the industrial area, Marek asked to stop in front of a seemingly abandoned warehouse. "This is it," he said, but he didn't get out of the car immediately. Instead, he made a quick phone call in Polish, speaking in a low voice. Tomasz couldn't fully understand, but he caught words like "we're here" and "it's ready." When he tried to start the car after Marek left, Tomasz discovered that the engine wouldn't start. The vehicle had been discreetly sabotaged during the trip. Marek, who had pretended to leave, returned to the car with 2 other men who emerged from the shadows of the warehouse. "Car trouble?" Marek asked, now with a sinister smile. Tomasz realized he had fallen into a carefully planned trap. The men explained they were operating an elaborate scheme. They used fake profiles on the app to lure drivers to isolated areas, sabotage the vehicles en route, and then stole both the car and the driver. "You're not the first," Marek said, pointing to other vehicles hidden behind the warehouse. The group had developed a sophisticated method. They studied drivers' work patterns, identified those who worked alone and at night, and then created fake passenger profiles with positive reviews. During the ride, one member of the group would discreetly sabotage the car, often by cutting essential wires or removing fuses. Tomasz was held captive in the warehouse, where he discovered that other drivers had experienced the same situation. The warehouse was equipped with tools to quickly dismantle cars, fake documents, and a communication system to coordinate operations. The criminals sold the vehicles on the black market and used the driver's documents for fraud. For 3 days, Tomasz was interrogated about his finances, routines, and contacts. The group wanted information to expand their operations and identify other potential targets. They demonstrated detailed knowledge of how ride-hailing apps work and their system vulnerabilities. The situation became even more terrifying when Tomasz discovered that some previous drivers had never been released. In a corner of the warehouse, he found personal belongings from at least 6 different drivers: wallets, cell phones, and car keys. When he asked about their fate, the criminals remained silent, but their expressions made it clear that the end had been tragic. During a desperate escape attempt, Tomasz managed to escape the warehouse and run through the industrial area. The criminals pursued him, but he managed to hide among other abandoned buildings until dawn. When he finally found an area with cell phone reception, he called the police and reported his location. The ensuing police operation was complex and revealed the extent of the criminal network. In addition to the main warehouse, other operating points were discovered in various Polish cities. The group had expanded its activities to include not only app drivers, but also delivery drivers and other professionals working alone. During the investigation, police uncovered evidence that the criminal organization had been operating for over 2 years. They had developed a sophisticated recruitment system, using information gathered from social media and apps to identify vulnerable targets. The group also maintained contacts with stolen car receivers and document forgers. Merrick and 5 other members of the group were arrested and sentenced to lengthy prison terms. During interrogations, they revealed details about their operations, including the fate of missing drivers. Unfortunately, not all cases were solved, and some families never received answers about the whereabouts of their loved ones. The case had a significant impact on the ride-hailing industry in Poland. New security measures were implemented, including stricter passenger screening, real-time tracking systems, and panic buttons for drivers. Ride-hailing companies also began working more closely with law enforcement. Tomasz survived, but never returned to work as a ride-hailing driver. He became an advocate for better safety conditions for transportation professionals and regularly participates in awareness campaigns. His experience serves as a warning about the risks faced by workers operating alone, especially during nighttime hours. The industrial area where the kidnapping occurred has been revitalized, but locals still avoid the area at night. The no-return road case has become a symbol of modern urban dangers, where technology can be used both to facilitate work and to create new forms of crime. 6. The Village of the Forgotten. A tourist couple experiences car trouble while passing through a small ghost town in Mexico. The locals seem friendly, but they soon realize that no one who arrives can leave, and that their cars are deliberately sabotaged. The disappearance of Maria and Carlos Hernandez, which occurred in December 2022 in the small town of San Esteban, in the state of Chihuahua, Mexico, remains one of the most disturbing cases in the Mexican Federal Police's files. The Spanish couple, traveling through Mexico on their honeymoon, became the protagonists of a nightmare that revealed a decades-long local conspiracy. The story was reconstructed from GPS records, statements from authorities, and evidence found at the scene. Maria and Carlos had planned a romantic trip through Mexico, exploring historic cities and stunning landscapes. They were driving a rented van along the federal highway connecting Chihuahua to Durango when, around 4 p.m., their vehicle began experiencing brake problems. Concerned for their safety, they decided to stop in the first town they came across to seek mechanical assistance. San Esteban appeared like an oasis in the middle of the desert. The small town, with about 200 inhabitants, had a central square, a few adobe houses, and a colonial church. The residents seemed friendly and welcoming, offering immediate assistance. Don Ramon, an elderly gentleman who introduced himself as the local mechanic, examined the car and diagnosed a complex problem that would require special parts. "It'll take a few days to get the parts," Don Ramon explained, suggesting the couple stay at the local guest house. "It's safer than trying to drive with bad brakes." Maria and Carlos accepted, impressed by the hospitality of the residents. The guest house was simple but clean, run by Dona Carmen, a motherly woman who welcomed them as family. For the first few days, the couple enjoyed the tranquility of the village. The residents were attentive, sharing local stories and offering home-cooked meals. However, Maria began to notice strange details. There were no children on the streets, no resident appeared to be under 40, and there was no sign of economic activity beyond a small shop selling basic supplies. When Carlos asked about the delay in the parts arrival, Don Ramon always had an excuse. "The supplier is late, there were problems on the road. Maybe next week." The couple began to suspect something was wrong when they realized their cell phone had no signal. The payphone had been broken for months, and there was no internet anywhere. The situation became even more disturbing when Maria found personal belongings belonging to other tourists at the guest house. Suitcases, cameras, documents, and souvenirs from various countries. When she asked Donna Carmen about the objects, she vaguely explained that sometimes tourists forget things and that she kept them for when they returned. Her explanation didn't convince Maria, who began discreetly documenting everything she saw. While walking through the settlement, Carlos discovered a small cemetery on the outskirts of town. Among the old tombstones, he found some recent ones with foreign names and dates from recent years. When he mentioned the discovery to the locals, they explained that sometimes tourists get sick and that the desert climate can be dangerous. The explanations sounded increasingly forced. Tensions escalated when the couple attempted to leave the village on foot, following the road they had taken. After a few hours of walking, they found a road blocked by a barricade of rocks and branches. When they returned to the village, Don Ramon explained that there were landslides and that the road was dangerous. The couple realized they were effectively trapped. That night, Maria and Carlos decided to secretly investigate. They found a shed behind Don Ramon's workshop where several cars with license plates from different countries were located, all in varying stages of disassembly. They recognized vehicles they had seen in news reports about missing tourists in the region. The realization that their cars had been purposefully sabotaged was devastating. During their nighttime investigation, they discovered that residents were secretly meeting at the church to discuss the visitor problem. Hidden away, they overheard conversations about how to process tourists and divide their belongings. The entire village was involved in a scheme to rob and eliminate travelers passing through the area. The couple realized that San Esteban was a death trap. The locals had developed an elaborate system. They discreetly sabotaged the cars of tourists passing by, offer hospitality while holding them captive, and then disposed of the evidence. The geographic isolation and lack of communication made it the perfect crime. Maria managed to hide a small camera and record evidence of the criminal activity. During a desperate escape attempt, the couple managed to escape in the early morning hours, walking through the desert until they found an alternative road. They were rescued by truck drivers who took them to the nearest town, where they alerted the authorities. The ensuing police operation revealed the full extent of the conspiracy. San Esteban had been operating as a ghost town for over a decade, luring unsuspecting tourists and systematically eliminating them. The belongings of at least 20 different tourists were found, including documents, vehicles, and personal items. During the investigation, it was discovered that the village had been economically abandoned years earlier, leading the remaining residents to develop the criminal scheme as a means of survival. They had created a facade of rural hospitality to attract victims, using their geographic isolation to their advantage. 16 residents were arrested and convicted of murder, kidnapping, and robbery. Don Ramon was identified as the leader of the operation, having developed the vehicle sabotage method. Donna Carmen coordinated the victims' accommodation and monitoring. The village was evacuated and remains abandoned. Maria and Carlos survived, but never fully recovered from the trauma. They became advocates for better communication systems in rural areas and participate in awareness campaigns about the risks of traveling through isolated regions. Their experience led to changes in tourism safety policies in Mexico. And so we come to the end of our 7 horror stories involving cars that broke down in the wrong place. So, which one scared you the most? Will any of them make you double-check the condition of your car before a trip? Tell us in the comments which one was your favorite. If you enjoyed this dive into the darker side of mechanical failures, don't forget to leave a like. This really helps the channel grow and encourages me to bring you more spine-chilling stories. And if you're not a subscriber yet, subscribe now and activate the bell.